Hi, everyone. This is Tom Salemi of DeviceTalks. Welcome back to DeviceTalks weekly podcast. Happy Labor Day weekend. I hope you're having a great one or had a great one or will have a great one. We'll be talking a bit about the labor force today. Danielle Kirsch, senior editor of Mass Device, is on the podcast. She just finished up our Bay 100 medical design and outsourcing issue in which she does some deep data diving on the workforce, on R&D spending, on CEO salaries. So we'll talk a lot about that today with Chris Newmarker, of course, executive editor of Life Sciences. He is back on the podcast, and I am very excited. If you want to read the episode the issue of Medical Design and Outsourcing, we'll put the link in the show notes, but you can, of course, go to medicaldesignandoutsourcing.com to read this issue and also to subscribe to receive future issues. And after that conversation, I'll be speaking with Bertin Nahum. He is CEO of Quantum Surgical. He'll be joining us at DeviceTalks West, where we'll be talking about the future of surgical robotics. We're looking, yes, at the technology, but also where this cool technology fits into the healthcare settings of the future. We'll have hospital executives on there, others representing the providers. In addition to Bertin Nahum, we'll have Anna Dubois and Adam Sachs, CEOs of different types of surgical robotics companies. So it's going to be a great conversation. You should totally be there. So go to DeviceTalks.com to register. Again, it's happening on October 18th and 19th at the Santa Clara Convention Center. Lots of other great surgical robotics talk as well. Dave Rosa, president of Intuitive Surgical, and much, much more. We'll also be talking about neuromodulation, about diabetes, about vascular, about neurovascular. It goes on and on and on. So totally don't miss this. Go to DeviceTalks.com to register. If you need some insights right now, like right away, like next Tuesday, you can join us at Device Talks Tuesdays. Register for that. It's free. It's brought to you by Laird, and the title is Unlocking the Future of Medical Connectivity, Harnessing the Power of Wi-Fi 6/6E. This Wi-Fi 6/6E is going to be the backbone of connected health going forward. So if you don't want to be left behind, you might want to join us for this webinar. Again, you can register for that also at DeviceTalks.com. Device Talks Tuesdays are free. They are fun. They are informative. And I love to take questions from the audience. So you should be there. Bring your problems. We'll get you solutions. Laird is great about that. And there's no reason not to join us at Device Talks Tuesdays. All right. So that's it. Great episode coming up. Device Talks West coming up in October. Device Talks Tuesday coming up on Tuesday. Let's get this podcast started. And happy Labor Day, all. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Well, Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks.
It's been
how
busy.
Are things?
Things are going well.
You hit the fair?
Hit up the fair, yes.
Yeah.
Got
corn or kettle corn or, I don't know, fried something or other.
Got some deep fried pickles when we first got in.
Look at you.
Little deep fried pickles with some dill ranch dressing.
Wow.
Got a little bit of that. Got a little bit of roasted corn. Of course, my 5-year-old son was on my shoulders eating an ear of corn, so that made things a little greasy. So
he had something easy to wipe his hands on. Just Daddy's hair. That works
Dad's
well.
Hair. Yeah, it was good times. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad you folks had some nice times at the fair. We are here to talk about the Big 100, which coincides with Labor Day. It's Labor Day weekend. And we've our Big 100 issue of Medical Design and Outsourcing features an exhaustive analysis of the medtech industry, and of course, as the name indicates, the largest 100 companies in medtech, but lots of other cool stuff in it as well. So we brought the maestro of this introspection into to the podcast. We're here with Danielle Kirsch, senior editor. Danielle, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you, Danielle.
It was a pleasure to have the voice of Fast Five on the Device Talks weekly podcast. So Danielle, why don't you give us an overview, give our listeners an overview, just the big 100 issue. What is it, and what do you try to accomplish each year when you're sort of assembling it?
The Big 100 is a list of the 100 largest companies in the world, as you mentioned. It's kind of a who's who of the medtech companies, who's growing their sales the most, what industries are doing the best. We also compare their research and development spending and their headcounts just to see what the state of the industry is for the most part. We like to break it down into biggest orthopedic companies and just kind of narrow down all these analysis from these several data points into, who employs the most people, who spends the most on research, who has the highest revenue, and things like that.
That's great. And we're not going to read through all 100 companies. Folks can go to medicaldesignandoutsourcing.com to find the issue. It's available electronically. People can guess.
I thought we were gonna like sing through it, like do like a Billy Joel's "We Didn't Start the Fire" thing. Like Medtronic J&J.
That's a great idea for next year, Chris. We need a more preparation for that though, but you are on fire. You are an idea, man.
We might be sued by the estate of Billy Joel, but
well, he's not dead yet, so we might be sued by Billy Joel himself.
Sued by Billy Joel.
Which, it's not a deal breaker. If I were to be sued by anybody, I would love to be sued by Billy Joel.
Put that on your LinkedIn page. Like, got sued by Billy Joel.
He got me through a lot of stuff in high school, so that's great. All right.
Piano Man's a tearjerker,
It's like... absolutely. And what the heck is a real estate novelist? All right, we don't need to get into that right now.
Let's get it.
All right. So folks should really go to the issue to find the rankings. There were some surprises, and I love, Danielle, that you added sort of the 101 through 105 as well, like those that almost made the list. I think those are almost more interesting than the folks who did make the list, just to see who barely missed. Do you find a lot of movement year to year? I imagine there's probably 90 that stay on the list, but at the end of the list, is there some give and some take?
Definitely. That's why I wanted to include 101 to 105 this year.
Yeah.
In particular, Inspire Medical Systems last year didn't make the list. Mm-hmm. And then this year they broke onto it at number 95. So they weren't at the bottom. They were still relatively within the top 95. So it's just interesting to see that, especially when it's companies that are doing something really innovative. But also this year, one of the companies did not do as many sales as it did last year. So it did drop off the list. So it was something that I kind of wanted to highlight as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're definitely right. The 101 to 105 is always interesting. It's the companies to watch out for. I mean, one of them we've talked about a lot. You talked to their CEO, Outset Medical. So maybe next year we'll see them in the 100. So it's good to watch for these companies.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, they're names that I know. I mean, Glaukos, Axonics, Silk Road Medical, S.A. Bone. I shouldn't give away this list but I think it is a great compliment to the list itself. But what I think is even cooler is the way you've dug deeper into the analysis and the data that you've compiled to look at things like R&D spend versus revenue and CEO salaries and workforce makeup. Given that this is Labor Day weekend, it's a timely conversation. Let's talk first about workforce, if you will. Were any changes there that are worth discussing?
Yeah, I found that headcount was down nearly 7% year over year as we caught the beginning of the industry's layoffs that we heard about earlier this year. It was basically a little over 60,000 employees were cut from our analysis from last year.
Oh my gosh, what was that number again? How many people were cut?
A little over 60,000.
60,000.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. 60,000 less. Fewer workers.
Fewer. Yes.
Fewer.
Wow.
Fewer. How does that compare to years past? Does it vary from going up and down? Is there a rhythm to it? Is it predictable? Like, did you go into this list anticipating there'd be fewer workers than there were? I'm curious, like when you saw that number, Did you say, wow, that makes sense? Did you say, well, that's more than I thought? And again, how does that compare to like year to year? Does it go up and down year to year?
So this year it wasn't much of a surprise, especially as we've been seeing many layoffs within the industry. So we kind of anticipated some sort of a loss in headcount this year.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting 7%. I was expecting more 1 to 2%, but I guess that really shows like the size of the medtech industry and how many people are in it.
Yeah.
For 60,000 people to be lost to make a 7% decrease. But as for year to year, last year there was a 6% uptick in headcount. So I wouldn't say it's like it's expected, but every year it just depends. I guess it depends. Just like what they say in their annual reports or on their earnings calls, it depends on the economic headwinds.
And I would say, I mean, right now, I mean, companies in general are finding it, more expensive to operate. I mean, inflation seems to be cooling off, but we had a decent amount of inflation over the past year. We have interest rates up to, get that inflation under control. That makes it more expensive to get your hands on money. And then, for the medtech industry, like supply chain challenges have been especially tough. And the health provider company, the health provider customers have, been facing a lot of operational challenges coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, I mean, that's all been going on for medtech. But I mean, it was interesting because, I mean, before you even did this analysis, I mean, Mass Device already had, reported on like job cuts in the industry around 18,000. So it really does seem you kind of caught, because a lot of these companies that we're measuring in that report were using their most recent annual reports. So a lot of this was 2022, but you're catching kind of like the beginnings of all this that, hopefully, knock on wood, is, wrapping up now. But on the flip side, Danielle, I mean, you found, okay, so unfortunately, I mean, the job losses weren't like a super surprise. But on the flip side, I mean, you found out something else really interesting in the past year, right?
Yeah, I mean, even as employment counts at the largest companies are going down, companies seem to be betting on research and development to grow their sales, at least according to my analysis.
Yeah, I mean, tell us more about that.
So R&D spending for the 100 companies was up 19.8% to $26.4 billion year over year. And one reason behind that could be more focus on innovation. If companies can't acquire smaller companies, this is according to Andrew Jay, general partner at Borna Health Fund. He was saying that new products are the life and blood of the medical technology industry, but these new products can also create new markets. They can shift market share. New products can drive market growth, things like that. So it just seems that R&D spending is driving revenue at some of the companies that have grown their sales the most year over year.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And I mean, I recall when Medtronic, came out with the micro leadless pacemaker. One of the big things about it was like, wow, this was like an all hands on deck internal R&D effort that made this. I mean, usually when we're seeing innovations in the device industry, it's from smaller companies that get acquired. So, I mean, it is that seems like that could be a possibility, that if it's harder to acquire smaller companies right now, that, the bigger companies, they're doing more R&D, and hopefully we'll see some more neat innovations coming from inside the big companies because of this.
I'm not quite sure why the smaller companies would be harder to acquire, given there's no IPO window. And I'm not sure if it'd be interesting to track the next couple of years to see how much that spend really swings back and forth. I think it would be.
Yeah.
Andrew J knows a lot more about all this than I do. I'm just offering my 2-cent opinion, but I just wonder if there's more. I don't know if there's. I wonder if there's something more driving the increase in R&D, and it might just be, I don't know, a strengthening of organizations. It might be the cost of R&D. It might just be that things are more expensive that they were before, in terms of services and materials?
I know one of the big things, I mean, just listening to all these earnings calls, I mean, I'm hearing a lot more CEOs saying like we're boosting R&D. I mean,
Yeah.
even Medtronic, is saying like that in recent years they've, boosted their internal R&D spending. So even though, yeah, there's challenges they're working through over there, they're definitely, trying to, cut some costs operationally. They're saying, hey, but we're hiring engineers, we're hiring R&D here to, get, build some innovations for future growth.
Yeah.
So,
And to amplify
I
Andrew's
mean,
point, maybe it's as much that there are fewer companies being developed with really interesting technologies. So big companies feel the need to augment their own R&D to offset any shortage of startups. It's the financial numbers. If you look at numbers of dollars going into privately held companies, they're still strong. But on a whole, maybe there's a feeling that big companies need to be bigger players in R&D. So
I mean, they're definitely strong, but I mean, one of the themes I'm hearing a lot in the earnings calls is the analysts are saying, but we want more. We want like really, there's kind of this sense there was really robust growth, before the pandemic. And, there's kind of like, I mean, there's been a lot of earnings calls where it's been like, I mean, we were talking about that a few weeks ago, like they're kind of picky right now. There's a lot of pickiness. Like, it's like, oh, we're going to grow 8% this year. Like, well, why not 12? Like,
yeah,
so
it's also interesting. I wonder if new devices are just more expensive to develop, where you need to have connected health, you need to have cybersecurity, you need to have all these other elements to it that perhaps weren't part of it before. So we're
now supply chain definitely. I
yeah,
mean,
just
that
overall
drives
costs.
up
Yeah.
costs.
So
Yeah.
interesting. We're throwing a lot of spaghetti against the wall, but that's why issues like this are so great. It just kind of
And what's really cool about that issue too is like, so I mean, on top of the analysis that Danielle had for us here, I mean, you created, I mean, there's a chart of, the largest R&D spenders. And I mean, that's kind of, it's like, oh yeah, of course, Medtronic's at the top. And, but there's another chart that's, R&D. What was it? It's Danielle, it's R&D as spending as a
Ranking by percentage. It's R&D ranking
Yeah,
by percentage of revenue.
that's right. And that if you go to medical design outsourcing and click on MDO digital editions on the right side, you can go look at our September issue here. It's also on the homepage slider right now, and and get in there and check out that chart for now. I mean, I think we're planning to have more coverage based on that chart later this month, so keep an eye out. But I mean, but it's yeah, it's quite a list, and the companies that are at the top. I mean, I think these are companies that get us excited. That we're like, wow, they're doing some really interesting stuff, which would make sense since they're spending a good chunk of their revenue on R&D.
Danielle, just to put this up front, the source of all this material, you're going through SEC documents. That's where you're getting this data.
That's
Yeah.
correct. SEC documents, and for the foreign companies, their annual reports that are on their websites.
Wow, that sounds like fun.
Riveting.
And the last piece that I think is going to spark a lot of conversation, I'm sure already has, is your CEO salary survey. Talk a bit about that. Have you done this one before? And what do you what's the rationale behind putting this data together?
I have not done a CEO compensation story before, but our colleague Jim Hammeran has been doing a lot of say on pay stories on medical design and outsourcing. So he had been keeping track of stock or stakeholder conversations about whether CEOs should be compensated the way they were being compensated. And so I just kind of wanted to do a full analysis of how much CEOs are paid versus how much the workers are paid and figure out what the pay ratio is for those. Well, I didn't have to figure it out. The companies disclose them publicly with the SEC. So no math involved on my end. It's all their
That's
math.
always helpful.
Yeah. And it's really cool that I mean you're able to do this because like the SEC only started requiring this in recent years that you had to
Right.
yeah, exactly. Like the CEO compensation versus, what your median worker, your person on the middle of the chart made, yeah, it's I mean, what were some of the big insights you gain
what
from
are some
that?
of the outliers? We don't want to give away the whole list, but I think if I may just offer mine, and it might be the same as yours. Adam Elsesser of Penumbra had a surprisingly low salary.
Definitely, he is the lowest on the list. I know we didn't want to spoil anything, but he is the lowest on the list. He has chosen to take less than $1 million in salary. So the pay ratio it's less than 10 to 1, but Penumbra characterized his pay package as below market because Adam himself said that he expressed a preference to the compensation committee that his cash compensation be modest so that Penumbra could invest in other areas of the business. So he would much rather take a smaller paycheck if the company can continue to innovate, as we discussed before, in R&D, things like that. So
that's pretty remarkable.
There's that.
And you're right. We don't want to spoil anything, but you want to give someone credit. I think it's a unique perspective from Adam Elsesser.
On the flip side, the CEO at the top of the list with that ratio, who I won't disclose, you got to check out the article. But I mean, he made more than 1,000 times more than the median employee at the company being led. I mean, so wow, that's quite a ratio.
And you would think that Medtronic, the largest medical device company in the world, maybe their CEO would be the top paid CEO out of all of the 100 companies that we keep track of, but he is not. And that's also something that you could go and discover and see who actually is the top paid CEO.
Yep. No, I think it's good to leave a little bit of surprise. And again, I don't think we're making any judgment or casting aspersions or anything like that on any company or executive. But it's an interesting comparison to see, how the leaders of these companies are being compensated. And I think if you're one of these employees at these companies, it's interesting for you to know where your CEO ranks compared to others and sort of where the priorities are for executive management compensation.
I definitely don't want to pick on medtech. I mean, this is something you see across corporate America. I mean, if you're a top executive at a publicly traded company in America, like executives make a lot more money than the rank and file workers, and definitely. I think this is. I mean, if I was working inside one of the medical device companies, I'd be interested to go through this and see, like how much does the top executive of our company make, versus, what I'm getting on the paycheck, so.
Excellent. All right. Well,
and everyone can check this out on MDO under the headline, Untangling MedTech CEO Pay Ratios.
Absolutely.
Tom. And in that article, you can sort the table by total pay, CEO pay. You can sort it by median pay, pay ratio, company revenue, headcount. So whatever you want to see, who employs the most employees, what does their CEO make? That you can dictate however you want it to be sorted.
I loved how you had a chart on here too, like with bubbles, like so you could kind of see the size of the pay versus the revenue. That was really cool.
All right. Well, so I think we've shared enough details of this issue. It's really fascinating reading. And as Daniel said online, there's a lot of great ways to sort the data. And I think that's always most valuable. But Chris, how can folks let's just be crystal clear. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. But how can folks get this issue and future issues of medical design and outsourcing?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not getting the print edition, you're missing out on having something you can have on your desk like this every September. That's a really good reference resource. You just go to medicaldesignandoutsourcing.com. You go to the bottom of the homepage and then there's a subscribe to the print magazine and subscribe. Like get that print edition. I mean, on top of the big 100, we've, got our, women in medtech, issue coming up in October. That's another like really, really big project that Danielle manages. That's just like fantastic for us. And then we have our medical device handbook is coming out in November. And then I would just add all this big 100 content. You can find this by just going to the medicaldesignandoutsourcing.com homepage and right there near the top, there's a big, 2023 Big 100 box that you can click on, and that'll show you a few, the full. We'll have access to the full report and all the articles that we've been producing around it. And if you want to kind of just read like a digital print edition version of this, you can scroll just down a little bit and click on back issues for MDO digital edition, and and click through a PDF of our September issue as well.
All right. So lots of ways to find this information. And Danielle, you're no rest for you, as Chris indicated. You're working now on the upcoming Women in Medtech issue.
That's correct. Hard at work on women in medtech, but I also did want to point out that all of us are doing a really good job of sharing Big 100 content on our LinkedIn. Tom, you've been really gracious in sharing some of the content
stuff.
Or resharing some of the data analysis that I have done. So that's also a good way to find some of the work that we've been doing.
That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point. And we'll get into where you can follow us on social media right after this interview. So Danielle, thanks for sharing the insights on the Big 100, and thanks of course for putting all this together. It's a great service for the medtech industry.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
That was awesome.
So Bertin Nahum, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm excited to learn about the quantum surgical story, but you've got a long history in surgical robotics with Medtech S.A. that I want to get into as well. But first, let's find your very start. Your LinkedIn profile doesn't tell me what your first job in medtech was. Was your first entry into Medtech S.A. through robotics, or were you in the medtech industry prior to that?
Yeah, so if I go a little bit even longer back in the days, I am an engineer by training. I'm an engineer. I graduated from a school of engineers in France and also in the UK, Coventry. I got a Master of Science in robotics. And I actually started my career directly in a company that was active, that was pioneering medical robotics. That was in the mid-90s, and that was in a small city in France, Grenoble. So at the time, Grenoble was known for being very, pioneering all those robot-assisted, or shall I say, computer-assisted solutions for surgical and medical application. So this is where I started my career. I started as an R&D engineer, doing mostly software development. And I did that for a couple of years before I transitioned to a more, a position close from the field. I was basically helping the physicians and their teams using technologies during their intervention.
What was the opportunity that you saw for robotics as part of our surgical solution? Obviously, it wasn't broadly accepted at the time. Few visionaries saw it, yourself included, it appears. What opportunity did you see there?
So again, I am an engineer by training, as I said, and ended up being in the field of medical applications by mistake, shall I say, because, I was not basically trained to do that. And that was at the occasion of, at the time, a training that I did at the end of my studies, a student project that was about developing a solution, an intelligent artificial solution for, decision in brain tumors. And this is when I basically discovered how technology could be used to help physicians, treating in a better way the patients. So that's when I decided that I wanted to basically, work in the field of medical industry. And that's by mistake that I ended up starting in robotics. And I think that the fact that I was dealing with physicians, surgeons and their team on a day-to-day basis in my second position as a field engineer, I think this was very instructive because I could see all the challenges the physicians and their team are facing on the day-to-day basis and how technology could help them better solving some of the issues that they are meeting.
How do you, at the time you may have seen it, but I don't think the surgeons themselves saw it. I don't recall any surgeons saying, what we really need some sort of technology to help me do what I'm currently doing. What is it that you, as an engineer, how do you sort of see that opportunity, see that need, even though when those people who are performing the duties don't see it? How do you convince yourself that it's there? And later on, I guess, how do you convince others that they need the assistance as well?
I think that that's a very important point that you're raising. And I think this comes back to the question of why using robots anyway. And I think that there was a big mistake at the beginning, and it is still done, that people are trying to replicate the benefits of robotics in industry to the medical field. But that's not the same thing. Robots in industry are used basically to improve the productivity, to be able to do more, treat more, do a more productive, solution, something like that. That's not the case in the medical field. So to answer your question quite rapidly, I came to the conclusion that what robots are good at is to help physicians performing high-value procedures for patients that is otherwise very difficult to perform. That's the reason why, at the date of today, most robots are tackling so-called minimally invasive procedures. Because it has been proven, and that's undisputed, the fact that when you are capable of performing a procedure in a minimally invasive way, the patient benefits are undisputable as compared to an open procedure. However, when you are in a minimally invasive scene, everything becomes much more challenging. First of all, the vision is no longer there, the dexterity is not there, and so on. So this is where technology, and more specifically robotics, has a huge role to help physicians performing those procedures in a minimally invasive way while still keeping the same level of performance.
So what was the opportunity that you saw, or the necessity that you saw, that led to you were a founder or a co-founder of Medtech S.A.?
I was the founder. The founder. So before I actually founded Medtech S.A., that was in the early 2000s, I had nearly 5 to 6 years of experience as an employee in different companies, active, or shall I say, pioneering surgical robotics. And I think I was very lucky because basically I had the opportunity to see most of the surgical specialties that at the time were concerned by robotics. I started in brain surgery, then moved to hip surgery, then laparoscopic surgery, soft tissues. So I saw all the first possibilities that were created, and this is when I started to have ideas on the very first project that I decided to tackle with Medtech S.A. when I founded the company in early 2000 was minimally invasive knee surgery. So we designed this robot called Bridget that was used to help orthopedic surgeon placing a knee implant in a minimally invasive way. The company was very small. We have a very small team, 4 or 5 people. We designed the robot from A to Z. We received CE marking for the technology. We also received FDA approval at the time. And quite rapidly, at the time, Zimmer came to us one day and said, we've heard of what you're doing. We'd like to know more about what you're doing. Basically those discussions ended up with the fact that Zimmer made an offer to first buy the company. And I said, I talked to my colleagues at the time. None of us really wanted to, move and work for a big company. So we said, we went back to Zimmer and we said, you know what? Instead of selling the company, why don't we just sell you all the patent portfolio, all the technology, and we stay a company with another project. Obviously, no competition with what we just sold to you, and let's do it this way. And they say, yeah, let's do that. So that's when. So we took the money.
That's interesting.
Basically, that was not a big money at the time, but for us that was important. That was quite important. And at the money we could reinvest in the company and start the new project that was now transitioning to brain surgery with a solution called ROSA for minimally invasive brain surgery.
So What was the time frame of that transaction?
Yep. So 2002, I created the company.
Yep.
2005, they came and we started to discuss. 2006, the deal was done. So 2006, 4 years. And from 2006, we started this new robot in Rosa. And 2008, the robot was designed. We started to market the device. We received, obviously, CE marking, FDA approval. We started to sell the device in Europe, in France, in Europe. Then in the US, in the early 2010, this is when already at the time I made this decision to move to the US personally to look after all the startup activities. So at the time I created a branch in New York City, and we started to sell more and more systems in the US. In 2013, the company got public in Paris Euronext, 2013, selling more and more systems. And in 2016, Zimmer Biomet this time, because in the meantime, Zimmer,
that's right.
They actually merged with Biomet to become Zimmer Biomet. So this time, Zimmer Biomet came back to us, and this time made an offer to buy the company that was public.
That's fascinating. I guess I always bring up Stryker's acquisition of Mako as kind of like the first real big bet on. Obviously, it was a full acquisition. It was over $1 billion. It was a big bet. But the Zimmer relationship with Medtech S.A. predates that by a long, long time. And that was really sort of the first, I think, big company entree into surgical robotics. Does that ring true to you?
I wouldn't say.
Maybe not the first.
No, I mean, for Zimmer Biomet, I think it was more like a defensive move.
Yeah.
What was happening is they could see that all their major competitors, Stryker, Johnson & Johnson, they were all acquiring robotics, and they could see that basically that was the way forward.
Yeah.
So at some stage, they just realized that if they did not acquire quite rapidly, a company, then they would have some issues.
Right, but Zimmer itself, 10 years earlier, made a really early bet in robotics that I don't think really gets acknowledged, at least not by me.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. I mean, the only thing that maybe the mistake they did, if I may, is I think they pretty much underestimated what it took basically to introduce and develop such a robotic market. So basically, they thought that just buying, the technology, then they will be able to deal with it. But I think for them, for a company like that was too early. Today, it's not the same game because robotics is much more spread, developed. So for a big player to enter this market, that's not an issue. But remember, we are talking about the early 2000s.
Yep.
The robotics market was not what it was today. That was still a very early stage kind of story that needs some approaches that are very including in terms of risks that you are taking that is not really compatible with a company like Zimmer. They were not willing to take the risks that were inherent to such a story at such an early stage.
That's fascinating. Well, you were with Zimmer for a very short time, and then it looks as if you started Quantum the next year. Can you talk about that transition a bit? Did you know you had another idea for another robotics approach to a different disease state?
So first of all, I had and I still have great relationships with Zimmer Biomet. So from A to Z until today, we always had a very good relationship. Also from the beginning, I think they knew and I knew that that's not my DNA, basically,
right,
to become. But I was prepared, basically, to say, why not spending maybe 1 year, 2 years, just to discover the test of being in a big group. I know that I'm not going to stay, and they knew that I was not going to stay anyway. But, they were expecting me to stay maybe 1 year or 2 years. But in fact, quite rapidly, I just realized that that's not for me. What I like, I am a pioneer. What I like to do is pioneering new ideas, new markets, and so on. I don't think I really have the skills for what it takes after that. Quite rapidly, I came to the conclusion that was maybe not for me. So the basic deal was, I think the company was completely acquired in September 2016, and by November I had already given my resignation. So I went to see Fernand, which at the time was my number two general manager, and I said, Fernand, I think I will go. And he said, oh, if you're going, I'm going too. And we went to see Lucien, that was also that we've been working together for quite a long time. He's the CTO. And same thing, Lucien said, oh, if you guys go, I go too. So the two of us went to Zimmer Biomet. He said, sorry, we are going. And I think they've been very positive. They say, okay, fine, I can understand, that's okay. The only thing we're going to ask you is that, okay, let's agree on a kind of a consulting agreement. And for a year, if at any time we are facing such or such issue, you come back to us and you help us solving those issues. Yeah, that's fine. Let's do that. And so in January 2017, we started Quantum Surgical. So to answer the question that you asked before, when we created Quantum Surgical, we had no idea on what we wanted to do. We just took the time to basically come back with all the discussion we had in the past, for the past almost 15 years now. So many physicians from different specialties coming to us and say, oh, why don't you do a robot for this or that? And often we had to turn down basically their proposal because we say, yeah, we are focused on our current story. But, we came back, we took all those stories, keeping in mind what we believe as being the winning equation for medical robotics, which is, again, robotics is not here basically for better productivity. It is to help physicians to perform one treatment, if possible, undisputed treatment. What I mean to say is this is not our job to reinvent the way you treat patients. You can do that, but this takes much more time, therefore much more money. We try to avoid that kind of thing. We only focus on treatment which benefits are completely accepted by the whole medical community. But for a reason, this treatment is not widely used. And often it's because it's a minimally invasive treatment which requires skills, experience, knowledge that only a limited number of physicians manage so that they can do this treatment. So we try to look on all the potential applications, different fields, where we found these applications, these criteria, including obviously an economic parameter to that. We obviously want to be on a big market where there's a huge demand. And this is how we ended up focusing on oncology, and more specifically in the field of liver cancer. That was the first application. So no need to say that unfortunately cancer is a huge disease. More and more patients, treatment. All the figures show that in the coming years, patients with cancer are going to be more and more numerous. For patients being diagnosed with a liver tumor, the conventional treatment is surgery. It consists in opening, basically, opening the abdominal barrier, and then basically removing the part of the liver where the tumor, the lesion is. This is obviously very efficient. This is made possible by the fact that the liver is an organ that regenerates contact. However, that's a very heavy treatment that is not always possible, because sometimes, depending on the position of the lesion, depending on the fact that there might be multiple lesions, that kind of treatment is not possible. On top of that, or beside this, almost 20 years ago, physicians developed this treatment, this minimally invasive treatment called percutaneous ablation. The treatment is very simple. It consists in introducing a needle percutaneously through the skin, you have to basically target your lesion. This needle is linked to a generator, which is going to deliver some kind of energy, hot, cold, whatever, in such a way that the needle is going to burn locally the tumor. So this treatment is very efficient. It is available and possible also to treat multiple lesions in the case of metastasis, for example. It is a treatment which is minimally invasive. In some cases, it can also be performed in under the basis of an I'm looking for the word, when the patient comes in and just goes back, leave the hospital the same day.
Day surgery. Yeah, day surgery?
Day surgery, yeah. That's very, very powerful. However, one can really easily understand that introducing a needle through the skin to target a tumor that could be a few millimeters diameter on one organ which is moving with a patient that is breathing is very challenging, and only a very limited number of physicians, therefore patients, can really benefit from that kind of treatment.
That's interesting.
We estimate that less than 20% of eligible patients benefit from this minimally invasive treatment. So then again, we've got the equation. This is where robotics, assistance in robotics, comes to help physicians performing this high-value minimally invasive treatment thanks to the robotic assistance.
I was wondering about that because you have the demo video on your website, and is it Epion? Epion.
That's a good S. That's a good S.
I mean, if you look at the video, it looks like you're just inserting the needle into the liver. And I'm watching this kind of understanding that there must be a reason or a need for the surgical robotics, but it looks like a simple procedure. So what is, you kind of hit upon a little bit, what is so complicated about that? How does Epion compensate for those challenges?
So basically there is a whole protocol that at the end of the day enables the technology to compensate for all the motions, deformation that we said before. When you don't have that kind of assistance, again, you are performing this treatment in a blind way. What I mean to say is, for the physician, he or she is going to introduce the needle. There are obviously some kind of intraoperative imaging control, but still they are not so precise. Deliver the energy, hoping that the tumor is actually burned, and it is important to burn the entire tumor, because if there are only a few cancer cells remaining, start again. And because you are completely blind, you have to wait a few weeks or months to know if the treatment was efficient or not.
Interesting.
So that's the reason why many physicians will not even, take the risk of trying this treatment. So again, that's what we are doing right now, and the results we have are very, very encouraging. Is we make this whole process much easier, as you understand it. The physician is going to plan the procedures virtually on the pre-operative images, seeing the lesion, planning where exactly the electrode should be introduced, which path. The physician can also define what kind of energy, what kind of power is going to be delivered to completely cover the size of the tumor.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the procedure, the robot is going to position a guide, and the physician just have to introduce the needle through this guide with the knowing that at the end of the day, the electrode will be exactly at the same place. So this is very powerful and helps physicians performing in a much more steady and reliable way at this kind of procedure.
So, and I'm looking at the system now, and again, watching the video. So there's three components on wheels. One of them has the robotic arm on it. The other has a monitor. And the third, I don't know if it's some sort of kind of imaging camera system that would go over
That's
the
camera.
Camera?
That's the camera that basically, so three components, as you said, the robot itself, obviously.
Yep.
Also for the planning, that the interface and where the physician is going to plan, define what he or she wants to do. And at last, we've got this last component, which is that's a camera that gives the information to the robot where the patient is as compared to the robot, the tools, and so on.
And you mentioned the guide. That was the plastic, or I don't know what it's made, the ring that was placed on the patient's body.
Now, this ring is actually used. So basically, we are in the so-called image-guided procedures.
Okay.
So this ring is used to know where is the patient with reference to the robot.
Okay.
The guide is what is at the tip of the robot.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And this is where the needle is introduced.
So is Epion going to be used with any sort of ablative tool, or do you provide the tools as well?
Okay, so that's another very interesting idea. Our strategy has always to stay open to existing devices on the market. So
interesting.
To answer your question, we are agnostic to the type of needle which is being used. In other words, we are compatible with all the electrodes existing on the market today. Because right now, basically, we don't want to slow down the adoption. If a physician wants to use that kind of needle, we are not going to change his habits and say, no, you're not going to use this needle anymore. Now you're going to use such kind of needle. So for the physician, they keep the needle that they want to use, and they basically can use any kind of needle.
Interesting. So does this reflect sort of a different approach to surgical robotics, where you are sort of more of an open system, and I'm guessing ROSA has its own tools, and is this a system that's more, in addition to going after cancer, which is a new area, is also just a different type of architecture, maybe smaller profiles designed to fit into more ASCs or smaller ORs? Do you see this as sort of a new iteration, I don't want to say generation, but a new approach to surgical robotics? Or is it merely a redo of what you did with ROSA, but just in a different disease state?
That's a new thing. We are, I think I can safely say, as we've always been, we are pioneers, okay? Remember, we designed a first robot for knee surgery in the early 2000s. Then we did spine, brain, and so on. Today, what we are doing is we are transitioning the concept of image-guided robotic intervention, soft tissues. Let me explain. Basically, until today, there are mainly two big families of robots. There are many ways you can rank the robot, but I like to keep it simple and say there are two big families. There is on one side all the so-called image-guided robots, Mako, ROSA, Mazor, Elite, Blue Belt, whatever. In all those concepts, the paradigm is the same. You plan the procedures virtually on pre-operative images, and the robot is here to help you perform exactly what was planned. On the other hand, you have robots that are mainly, so just to finish with this first category, in this first category, it is until now, until today, mostly, or shall I say, it's only hard tissues, hip, knee, bones, brain. Brain is considered as being hard tissues because the brain is encapsulated into the skull. So nothing, for a very simple reason, is that when you plan, between the time when you plan on images and when you perform the procedure, you cannot afford to have the whole scene moving, changing. So this concept of image-guided robotic can only work on hard tissues.
Okay.
So again, hip, knee, spine, and then the other categories is soft tissues. And now you're no longer in the concept of image guided. It's not to reproduce what was planned. It's about bringing additional optimal dexterity on a very confined environment to a physician which otherwise would have a lot of difficulties to perform the gesture he or she usually does. This is what obviously Da Vinci does, and all the Me Too Da Vinci that tries to do the same thing. So we are not in the image guided. There are no preoperative images. What this technology brings is only additional dexterity. We are the first one to transition the image-guided concept to soft tissues.
Interesting.
So we are pioneering. So I think, if I may, that could be a revolution, because if now we are capable, we see today how robotics are spread into knee surgery, spine, and so on. Now, most knees are done with robots today. If we are capable of showing that we can use the same concept to the soft tissues, then it's a huge avenue that we are opening, because one can easily understand that there are plenty of applications in soft tissues where you have images, you want to plan something, but then when the patient comes on the table and you open and everything changes, and and at the end of the day, you don't do exactly what you wanted to do because things have changed. So if you can, basically try to copy this concept to soft tissues, then there's a huge avenue, especially that's what we are doing.
Okay. So let's talk about that opportunity. Wrap up with just where you are. You've recently received FDA approval this year. You had a 510K clearance earlier. Was this the big one you needed, or what's your status commercialization wise, and what is your plan for rolling out?
So we are a commercial stage company. We already have a sold system in Europe, in France mainly. Recently started to market our device in the US. We have one already user in Miami. That's one of the reasons why we are here, Baptist Hospital, with Dr. Raj. And we are in the process of opening new hospitals so that will be announced in the coming weeks or so. Stanford is actually the next one. So we are really in this stage where we are accelerating the adoption of our technology. Again, the feedback are very, very encouraging. Professor Raj, who is the first user of EPON in the US, is a very renowned physician for interventional radiologist for liver applications. And he recently recorded a podcast where he explains what the technology is bringing already to him. And all of this, makes us very confident and very optimistic for what comes next.
So is there an extra bit of convincing you need to do for hospitals? If you're bringing sort of a new approach to surgical robotics, and they may be in a mind where they think, look, we have two categories of surgical robotics. We have one of those systems. We have one of those systems. We're all set. We don't need a third middle system. Is there some convincing that needs to be done for a revolutionary platform?
No, quite frankly, when we present our technology on shows and so on, people get it. Of course, yeah. But remember, we are in the medical field. What people need is not only idea, it's not only concept, it's data. Where we are right now is building data. You always have the champions who have the vision, who are capable of basically transitioning, adopting something, because they anticipate what are going to be the benefit. But this is not the conventional medical mind. The conventional medical mind is based on data, publications, show me the publication, show me the result. Oh yes, okay, the results are what you say. That's fine. Let's go. So that's where we are. We are building basically, those data with the first users of the system, and this is how we will convince more and more, physicians, hopefully, of the benefits of our technology.
Great. And last question: economics, price. How do you price a system like this? Is it in the same?
We are still in a situation where we have not completely defined what will be, on the long run, the price of it. Basically, right now, the price for a robot is around 1 million. In the mind of everybody, a robot is 1 million. We may, in some situation, we are making some effort because for the very early users, we have already sold system, at different prices depending on how early and the kind of collaboration we can have with the hospital. But basically, we're talking about 1 million.
Fascinating. All right. Well, this is a great story. Thank you for sharing it on the podcast, and look forward to following Epion's launch in the US. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Danielle Kirsch, first remind folks that this ain't the only podcast in town. What are you and Sean Hooley up to?
Yeah, me and Sean are hosting the Mass Device Fast 5 MedTech News Daily podcast, where we bring you the top 5 stories that you should know for the day in a quick format. Most of the time it's less than 10 minutes. Sometimes we have to go 11 if it's a big story, but you can find us over there, the Mass Device Fast 5, wherever you listen to podcasts.
That's great. So walk the dog, do the dishes, fold the laundry,
hit the treadmill.
Well, 10 minutes on the treadmill probably isn't very much, but I guess it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I think we're more of a treadmill kind of podcast.
Yeah.
Fast 5 is more walk the dog. Walk the dog. Drive to work if you have a very short commute, I suppose. 10 minutes would be a great commute. But all right. Well, and folks can also find that on any major podcast application. They can subscribe to Fast 5, or Danielle, you share it every day on your social media. So where can folks find you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn at Danielle Kirsch, Kirsh. But also, I know Sean wasn't here. He also posted every day on his LinkedIn at Sean Hooley, SEA and WHOOLEY.
All right. And Chris Newmarker, where can I know you and I always like that content when we see it, so folks will get it if they're following us as well. So where can folks find you on social media?
I'm an avid Fast 5 resharer, and you can find me at Chris Newmarker, just like a new marker.
All right. And I am Tom Salemi, of course, SALEMI. So follow us there. Please do. What do we want folks to do with this podcast, Chris?
You got to follow, subscribe.
That's right. Follow, and or subscribe to the DeviceTalks Podcast Network. You'll get DeviceTalks Weekly, Avid Talks, Boston Scientific Talks, Intuitive Talks, Stryker Talks, and we've got some other talks coming out that's going to blow your mind. So make sure you're liking and following on any major podcast application. And of course, please share any and all of these episodes on your social media channels. Don't forget to join us on October 18th and 19th at DeviceTalks West. And have a lot of
Gotta be there or be square.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great couple of days. The agenda is roaring. We've got the marketing rolling out, numbers looking great, and we definitely want to have you there. And DeviceTalks Tuesdays back in action. So join us on Tuesday. We'll have a great presentation brought to you by Laird. So you can find all of this at DeviceTalks.com, except for Fast 5, which we probably should put that up there. But you should subscribe to Fast 5 anyway. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, Danielle Kirsch, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Chris Newmarker, great to have you back.
It's great to be back, and everyone take care. Enjoy the end of the summer.